where does this rank in your mind all time?
It's absolutely 100% the biggest fight we've ever done.
ESPN raises UFC pay-per-view price 1 year after previous increase.
This thing was trending bigger than anything we'd ever done.
How are they trending right now?
Very good.
You think you broke?
We did. We broke the record. Okay. This thing's breaking every record we've ever had as far as numbers go. I told you guys that we were trending at 2 million pay-per-view buys. We're closer to 3 million now.
For the third time since the UFC moved to ESPN, the price is going up.
From $74.99 to $79.99.
Do you ever say like, hey, maybe that's a little too much for the consumer?
We don't.
Probably one of the things that you hate the most about the sport right now, particularly in the United States, is the price of pay-per-views. It's right around, what is it, $79.99 right now per pay-per-view, and we're coming hot off the heels of one of the best pay-per-views ever with UFC 301 and Steve Erceg versus Pantoja. What's really interesting is, so if you don't know who Mark Shapiro is, he's the president of TKO, which is the owner of the UFC / WWE. This is real life. Somehow that's an actual sentence. What he did was he got on a call to discuss with, I believe it was JP Morgan was the outlet that he talked to, about how the ESPN deal is coming to an end in 2025. So, I mean, we're within a year now of that happening. I mean, what, about 6-7 months?
Comes up quickly, doesn't it?
Yeah, and originally this deal was valued at about, what, $2.1 billion, about $300 million per year over the course of 7 years. So pretty landmark deal for the UFC. Well, this is what Mark Shapiro said, again, the president of TKO. We have grown into a position where we are now under-monetized. That's just a fact. Not when we did the deal with ESPN. It was a record deal, very exciting. It was triple what we were getting at Fox. But we are now under-monetized given the viewership, given the ratings, given the demos, and we look forward to having those conversations. They have to exclusively entertain offers from ESPN before they can move on.
Yeah.
But this is literally how soon this is all going to be happening. This is where it gets to the juicy bit, where he's talking about ESPN is now looking to kind of compete as a full-fledged digital network. So it's not just some things are on the app, some things are on traditional TV. Everything's going to the app, and the idea of bundling in a bunch of things. So this is what Mark Shapiro says. If I, for example, was launching direct-to-consumer flagships for ESPN, I might think about buying out the pay-per-view and putting it right on that flagship channel. Like you can only get, just like ESPN Plus, if you have that flagship. So it's the same kind of concept. But then he goes on to say, if you're trying to launch an ESPN flagship and whatever they might call it, that's the working title. And if you're trying to charge $29, maybe $39, whatever that might be, it might be better to have a monthly quote unquote pay-per-view that sits exclusive to that platform. Now, we haven't had those conversations with ESPN, but that's just an example of the kind of flexibility we're going to bring in those conversations. So what he's literally outlining here is what could be the actual death of pay-per-view.
Yes.
Now it's, you just pay a monthly amount that, so let's say it's $30, $25, whatever it is for the, you know, kind of blanket vanilla ESPN deal. But now you tack on an extra $10 to $15, you get every UFC pay-per-view every month, which is huge. You know, like we're literally talking $79.99.
Yeah.
If they can get like 1 million people to sign up for that, but if they can get like 1 million UFC fans to sign up for that, oh yeah, they've easily made up their kind of windfall here, it would seem, right?
We've all known that streaming is kind of the way that things have been going for the past however many years, and sports has always kind of lagged behind it. But now we've seen, especially in like the past year, things like Jake Paul and Tyson's going to be on Netflix. WWE is getting a Netflix deal. And yeah, and even ESPN being one of those big old sort of original television content providers, they're looking to move more into that as well. So you can tell that all these things, you know, people are used to paying subscriptions rather than paying pay-per-views for things nowadays. You know, very few people go out and buy movies, you know, on Google Play Movies or whatever it is, because usually they're on a streaming service already and you're already paying for it. So it kind of does seem like the natural progression, and it does seem like the UFC and sports in general have kind of been like resisting it for a long time, wanting to keep the pay-per-view model. The UFC start entertaining offers from people like Netflix or Apple or Amazon or whoever, these people who don't have a television presence, you know, I think it's definitely going to expedite the death of pay-per-view, just like naturally.
This is like a direct response, I feel like, to what they're doing with Paul and Tyson in there, just sort of shining a light on, hey, this is one of the biggest fights probably of this year, and it's going to be free for anyone who has a Netflix subscription, because Netflix have been able to operate in that way, and they want to do a live service. But, you know, he's leaving the door open, because he does say if you're trying to launch ESPN flagship or whatever. So he is saying, hey, we might not leave ESPN, we might renegotiate with them and end up being in a situation where they want to cover the pay-per-view costs as well.
Do we know that for sure? Like, is there no additional fee to watch the Tyson?
Oh, yeah, no, there's no additional fee. It's free for the...
That's a lot of cash.
Yeah.
And I think that's
left on the table.
But it's also so many more people are going to see the fight. Like, the Netflix audience is so much bigger compared to the boxing pay-per-view audience. So you just scoop up all those viewers.
You think what those sponsors are going to pay as well to be on that event? On Netflix with everyone, how many hundreds of millions of people have a Netflix subscription?
And I mean, if that's, even if you're not, most people aren't, you know, boxing fans, but if you're on Netflix and the homepage, the first thing, because everyone's on Netflix, everyone has Netflix, the first thing that comes up is Jake Paul, Mike Tyson watch live.
Yeah. It's also,
even if you don't
I
watch boxing,
also think that this works a little bit differently to the response. You're saying the model's in somewhat response to Tyson and Paul. It's like you have arguably two of the biggest names in boxing, like one of the greatest legends that is still alive, still active, still at age where he can perform. I mean, to what extent we don't know, but then you have Jake Paul is on like every boxing headline because of the controversy of he's a boxer, he's not a real boxer, he's
what's
a
your body
YouTuber.
count?
What's your body count? All that shit. So it's like, it's arguably two of the biggest names in the sport ever paired with the biggest streaming platform.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's why it's going to do so well.
Well, something Netflix has as well, which is kind of unique to it compared to how we're used to viewing MMA, is that it's a one platform internationally. No matter where you are in the world, you just go to Netflix. If you want to watch MMA, even in the UK, you have to go to like TNT. If you want to watch from Canada or Brazil, you have to go through a different system to get your product. So it's like Netflix already have an advantage. They have one global app that no matter where you are, you can watch this fight. If there's another competitor outside of ESPN that can provide that, like Apple TV or something, then that's got to be a big selling point as well.
What does that mean for us? Unless they partner with an app that we have in the UK, because
like Netflix.
Well, yeah, like Netflix, but
there's a lot more.
If they renegotiate with ESPN, we don't have that.
Well, we also know that they got really far down in talks before the ESPN signing with Amazon.
Exactly. You're very right there. Global distribution through one app.
So what about a pay-per-view with Conor McGregor? Because we know that sold 1.8 million pay-per-view buys. I think it was around 70 or 75 a pop at that time. That's a lot of cash, like a lot of cash. And I think if you're a pay-per-view star like Conor, you're like, no, put me back on pay-per-view. What are you guys talking about?
Well, I don't know. I feel like there's some wiggle room there to get a Conor pay-per-view still amongst all of that. Because only the other day, Dana was boasting about, it's way over X amount of dollars already. So there's no way he would deny that chance. Like, we know they keep Conor against his will just to have him on the perfect show at the perfect time. So they can make the most money they can out of him. So it's like in the UK, we get basically all pay-per-views free unless it's a Conor McGregor card. And we do get it cheaper, but they normally still charge you here as well. I cannot see a world in which McGregor is active and they don't charge for his appearance.
If they go with some kind of new partnership, like, because people are talking about these entertainment partnerships like Apple TV and Paramount and Netflix, there's no reason they couldn't always be on one platform and then a specific pay-per-view's on another one and they charge more. But just imagine the reality where all these people that we know and interact with on our daily lives have never heard of MMA and all of a sudden it's on Netflix. Like the exposure of the sport would just quadruple, like not even quadruple, just like it would just go global immediately. And like ESPN, like no one outside of America knows how to watch ESPN. I know we have other platforms, but Netflix would just change the game, son. We might be able to buy a house, you know? Like,
well, I do think when you were talking about Conor, I thought of an interesting point. If they do move away, if we're moving away from pay-per-view as a model, I mean, you have people like Conor who have these contracts that include percentage and points on the pay-per-view. They're going to have to...
Pay structure would change.
They were going to have to figure out a way to, add incentives to those guys to not be on pay-per-view.
Not if Conor McGregor is like the last true pay-per-view star and they reinvent a model where they don't allow their top top guys to get points from pay-per-views anymore because they have a new system. So it's like, hey, if we're never going to get someone who's going to make the deal so one-sided in our favor, why don't we just establish a new system? We don't allow them the points, and we control everything.
Then I feel like you're going to get a lot of angry stars who all of a sudden don't have.
Maybe they just not needle movers, mate.
You think of why Conor is coming back, though. A big part of it probably is, I'm going to get paid a fuck ton for this.
Yeah.
And part of that is pay-per-view points.
Yeah,
so you
definitely.
subtract that, do you still get to keep somebody like Conor McGregor around? I don't think you do.
I don't think you do, yeah.
I think somebody like that will essentially have a mutiny because you're giving him what you would have to do is guarantee, like, okay, this is what you made in your last fight. We'll just give you that straight up.
Yeah.
You'd have to do that.
And then there'd be an argument about, well, this could sell more than my last fight. How much,
Yeah, this is Habib level fight at 2.4 million buys, not 1.8 million.
I mean, look, I know this isn't this won't happen before they do all these negotiations and what have you, but like, obviously, more recent news coming out that Leon is open to fight McGregor if he beats Chandler. And so that would be an opportunity for McGregor to get a third belt in a new weight class that's never been done before, a 3-weight champion, and to have that extra bit of icing on the cake of that McGregor's going to be a champion again. How could you not charge through the roof for that? So I'm not saying, obviously, I'm just saying an instant like this in the future, in 2025, if they get a Netflix deal, if they get an Apple TV deal, how do you not charge the biggest star for a championship opportunity again? Like, you cannot, like, I feel like it'd be very easy to trick the public into paying their £40 a month for Netflix. They get all their movies, they get all their films as well, and then rolls around and you just charge them another extra 20 or 30.
Well, they're not doing that with Tyson Paul. That's the thing. And both of those guys want pay-per-view points. I don't know how much Jake Paul actually gets.
You would argue they're as big, if not
as well. I'm not going to make that argument because somebody might be like, Conor's a much bigger draw. I have no idea. But like, the point is, neither of those guys, are they getting pay-per-view points? It's not a pay-per-view. So they've somehow managed to give them enough money where that isn't a problem. So the reality of it does exist because we've got an example.
Aren't Netflix flailing in...
I don't think they are anymore because now there's a discussion that all these networks are going to start, like, Paramount, Disney, they're going to come together. It's almost like they already had something great when Netflix was like the only major streaming service, and they're all kind of starting to realize we're splintering our audience too much. I guess kind of the next question then. So, $29.39 is the pitch price, is that, Mark Shapiro doesn't work for ESPN. He's just saying, if I were the one running this ESPN flagship network kind of digital streaming service, these are the prices, $29 or $39.99. As a fan, does that sound like something that you guys would do? Obviously,
I mean,
you're not Americans. No one knows that. But
I think it's way more accessible. So I presume this would be like an ESPN Plus partnered with UFC package. So you would pay it'd be like £11 for your ESPN Plus, then you pay an extra $20 on top or whatever. And that is way more accessible because
it's really hard to find illegal streams these days, yeah?
Well, no, but let's go in the context that you're just a guy. You don't fuck around with all that technology stuff. You just want to watch the UFC on the weekend. So you just have an app on your TV that you can connect to. It's not like having to go through the Russian link and then refresh it and not click on the pop-ups. And
you seem to know how it works, man.
Yeah,
you do,
just forget all that stuff for now. But so it's like you're paying $11, $15, whatever it is a month anyway, and then every time a pay-per-view rolls around each month, you're shelling out another $80 for a pay-per-view.
Yeah.
And if you just love watching the sport and it's a thing you do and you will pay for the pay-per-views no matter what, whether it's a 301 or a 300, that is like, it's kind of buying you out as an audience, because it's like you're then forced with the question of, I just want to watch and enjoy it and it's my thing that I'm interested in, but I have to decide whether I do a weekly shop or I fucking watch one event God knows whatever hour. So it's like, if I can reduce that and afford groceries still and watch the pay-per-view each month, how is that not more good?
Do you think that if it goes on Netflix, ultimately this is better for fighters? Because let's just say there's a massive part of the audience that don't pay for pay-per-views, but all of a sudden are prepared to pay for a much cheaper subscription service. Money doesn't really go back to the fighters, we know that, but ultimately, do you not think more people would watch and pay and more money would actually get injected into a sport as a result of something like this?
They're talking about a lump sum being paid to TKO.
Right, but it's like, does any of that money go to the fighters? Like,
no, but I'm saying they wouldn't get money for our monthly payment to ESPN Plus going to them.
Right,
that
okay.
wouldn't then get
sure. Okay,
down because
I
they're just
understand
getting
that,
one
but
load
you
of
would
money.
like to think if suddenly a bunch of people start paying for a product like the UFC on a new platform, you would like to think that money goes to the UFC. Maybe it doesn't, but like...
Well, I mean, you know, no matter how you look at it, yeah, it's like, even if we're not happy with the rate that the pay has gone up, it does still allow for the fact that you have UFC 300 where people were getting 300K bonuses. There is like, even if it's 17%, of 2 billion, 17% of 5 billion is still more.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
So we're not happy necessarily with how the UFC is divvying it out, but yeah, it could ultimately.
Yeah, it's like what we were saying a bit like the other day. If everything's valued more, there's more money to share about. So like if you're in everyone's living room,
works,
no, but if you're in everyone's living room now, like just like that, by just having an ESPN contract, then there's more room for sponsors and there's more room for things like that. So more money going in because more people are seeing it.
Coming from New Zealand, where like you guys talk about, everyone has different sort of, they got the TNT here and the ESPN Plus app in America. We just had Fight Pass, which had everything on it. So if you paid for Fight Pass, you've got every fight night free, live and replayable, and you could buy your pay-per-views on Fight Pass. Which when I came here, I was like, oh, I can't even watch fight nights anymore. I have to pay for something else. That obviously is the dream, right? Having a UFC centric, like a UFC's own global streaming service with every fight, Pride, Strike Force, whatever, Pride, the library, and the pay-per-views, and the fight nights on it. Are we ever going to see that, do you think, as long as there's companies out there that can pay them billions and billions of dollars?
Yeah. Well, we just talked about Netflix with Jake Paul and Mike Tyson. Amazon Prime. That's like one of the most global platforms that exists. Everybody uses Prime. It's already, everybody orders from Prime, so they already have it. Even though we haven't been using it, it's like, oh, Fallout, I guess I do have Prime. I'll finally use it to watch something.
Like, I feel not.
So it's a great service.
People don't really watch Prime in the same way. I think Amazon is a more popular platform in terms of like. I understand, but like what you just said, like,
well, you would use it if you already have it,
right? But like the fact that we've had a UFC platform for so long, and it feels like it hasn't really taken off, which is fair enough because it also doesn't offer everything on it. They always outsource
it's held back.
Exactly. But even if it was all included in one subscription on UFC.tv, I still think if it was on Netflix, more people would watch it.
But here's the thing: if it's on if the UFC use this Fight Pass, because they obviously have the facilities to do it, we know why they don't, because they get more money not. But if they they could afford, because 100% of the proceeds would be going to them, they wouldn't be taking ESPN's not making any money on it. All of the advertising money was going to the UFC, all of the pay-per-view money, all of the subscription money, 100%.
That's true.
They could afford to make it a cheaper product and still possibly make the same amount of money or more, but they're probably not the same amount of money, but that's just the dream, right? I want that so much.
The counter to that, though, is, it's the classic business, cliche. Location, location, location. What's the point of setting up your business in a brick and mortar sense on a busy road? You could just get a way cheaper plot of land and set up there. The reason you want to be on Netflix is because somebody who wouldn't even think of watching the UFC suddenly, it's like, oh yeah, and that's what happens with ESPN. It's already where sports fans are, so there's a nice crossover there. You have the ABC cards, which is literally national television. Somebody's watching fucking Melrose Place. I don't know what's on ABC these days, but you have this kind of crossover of fan bases from a much bigger stream dipping into the UFC product now. This naturally segues into this discussion then. So, of the platforms that are out there. So we've got the Apple TVs, we got YouTube, we've got, Prime. Netflix could be a part of that deal. I mean, if TKO is going to do it with WWE, they could definitely do it with UFC. UFC is currently valued more in terms of they're selling their especially their pay-per-view product, a much bigger entity. So like if you were to pick anywhere, and I might not have even considered all the platforms, I mean, maybe they just all go into Disney Plus. I don't know.
No, Disney Plus is falling apart.
Yeah, I think they're all folding in to.
I think they're
Netflix
all folding
anyway.
into Netflix. Yeah, Netflix, Paramount, Apple TV, that whole conglomerate. If you're asking,
ideally, where would you want it to go? Yeah.
Right, I would probably just say Netflix. Screw it. Just put it on Netflix. I don't really have a problem with it being on Netflix. I feel like the only reason
you watch Netflix a lot.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
probably the easiest, most, and Netflix is one of those streaming apps that always works no matter how bad your internet connection is as well. It's always able to render something. It's the best one in terms of like being able to download stuff. It like has, I don't know. They've just built a good product.
Companies there.
Yeah, I think though for sure you are correct on saying the biggest platform would be Netflix, just for ultimate brand recognizability.
I guess the question for you is, like, would something like $40 a month for ESPN, if they just bundled in pay-per-views every month, would that be interesting to you? I guess is the real question. Because we can talk about hypothetically. Truth is, I don't live in America anymore, but I definitely would pay for that if I lived there. But I don't live there anymore, so I don't have the perspective people that currently do. And what network would you choose if you could?
So if you want to sign up to our streaming platform, which is just YouTube's streaming platform, it's only $2.99, isn't it, for a membership?
That's right. Every single day.
Every day, $2.99.
$2.99
a
day.
No, it's only, unlike the £30 you'll pay for ESPN Plus in the future to get the UFC with it, it's only $2.99 per month.
And we show all the pay-per-views on there anyway.
On Fight Companion, that's what we do at the Fight Companion. We show the pay-per-view.
Live.
So come watch it if you want a free pay-per-view.